Hey, Houndsman XP fans, we are back on the podcast with Cleave Dwire, and we are continuing the lion hunting saga. And I brought in some heavy guns with me. Somebody's actually can talk about this thing with some experience besides Cleave. And Shorty Gorham is on the podcast. So here we go. How's it going, guys?
Man, it's great. I'm glad to be here. I've been listening to them, missing out, and glad to be able to join in on this one.
Yeah,
going good. Glad to be back.
Yeah. So, Cleve, you've done a great job. You send me more amazing notes and different things, and I'm just going to kind of turn it over to you again and let you run with this thing and talk about. But I think the main thing we want to talk about is finding kills and then sorting out tracks around those kills on this particular chapter of your podcast here. So I'm just going to turn it over to you and kick it to you and say, go for it, man.
All right. Yeah. Well, it's your podcast. I'm just a guest. So
this is your show.
I don't know. Yeah, I'd kind of like to reiterate on some of the points I went over in the first podcast.
Yeah.
If possible. There were some that I didn't get a really touch on.
And recap that for, just recap what we talked about in the last podcast. And as you go through that, I'll look up which episode that actually was. It's a couple of weeks ago, but just go ahead and recap and cover the things that you think you need to go more in depth on.
Okay. I think we talked quite a bit about reading mountain lion scat, the contents of the scat. Say quite a bit of, say, hair and meat in the scat will indicate you got a pretty fresh kill someplace close by, or close somewhere in there. You got a lion there,
Mm-hmm.
And then if you got a lot of bone in that scat, then there's a good chance he's towards the end of his kill, and he might be moving to another area to look for another kill. On that same thing, I didn't get to talk a whole lot about mountain lions eating grass. Sometimes in between kills, we've noticed that they will eat some grass in between kills, and I don't know if that cleans them out. I think it cleans them out or something, but sometimes you'll see where they're passing strands of grass in their scat.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you see that, then you got a good idea that he's in between kills as well.
Let me ask you this. Why have you spent so much time, looking at mountain lion crap and, trying to figure out why mountain lions are eating this or eating that? Once you go into that, I'm curious.
I don't know. I guess the more you learn about them, the better you have a chance at catching them. But it's one of those things you start studying them, and it's intriguing to see every single one of their habits. And sometimes those are helpful, and sometimes they don't help you all that much. But we've kind of just noticed things over the years and made pretty good notes of it. And then when you notice it again, and you notice that it becomes a habit for most mountain lions, and then it's something to go by. So I don't know. It just seems to help you quite a bit on reading a mountain lion and getting a feel for him, if you will. The more you know about him, what he's been doing the last 10 days will give you a good idea of what he's going to be doing in the next 4 or 5 days,
mm-hmm.
per se. So I know it sounds kind of crazy to be paying attention to mountain lion crap, but
not at all.
If you know what he's eating, then you know where he's going. So exactly, yeah. So,
Shorty, you got something?
No, well, he's right. And so for me, if I trail a lion and I don't catch him today, the end of my day, while I'm still in the swing of things, is planning for tomorrow. Okay, what's this lion doing? Where do I need to go? What do I need to do? How am I going to catch him tomorrow? And by reading that scat, a lot of times you can tell, just like he's saying, if there's bone in it, if there's grass in it, are they if there's meat in it, are they at the beginning of the kill or are they at the end of the kill? If there's no bones, if it's all meat and stuff, okay. And I'm planning for tomorrow, I'm going to plan that the lion's probably going to come back to this kill. If there's bones and grass in it and he's at the end of that kill, I need to go look, where's this lion going next? So yeah, there's a lot to be said about looking at scat and trying to figure out what his next move is by what you saw out of that scat. So no, I totally agree. There's not a scat pile that I go by that I don't stop, get off my mule and look at.
Yeah. Well, I just want to kind of lay that out there and talk about why it's so important to know the game that we're hunting. It's not just about turning the dog loose. It's not just turning right. I mean, you guys are mountain lion experts, and we're trying to make other people increase knowledge here. So
you can never be too curious.
That's right.
Exactly. Yeah. You can never have too much knowledge, and sometimes I've noticed that what you would think is, written in stone in one area, you'd go to another region and that might just be a hypothesis. It might be a theory, because you go to another region and mountain lions have different habits for different regions. Some of them share the same exact habits. Some regions are totally different. And I guess we'll get into that later on in this podcast maybe, but I guess one thing I was wanting to really capitalize on is maybe can just reinforce that point, is to look at that scat like Shorty is saying. You can really figure out what a lion is going to be doing in the next few days if you can see what he's been eating now and what he's been doing.
Yeah. Cleve, this is the third time you've been on our podcast talking about lion hunting. And if anybody hasn't heard the first two, I think they probably ought to go back and listen to those. That would have been episode 116. And then again in episode 122, tons of valuable knowledge in there, kind of give everybody an opportunity to get to know who you are, Cleve, and hear those first two before we go into this thing. So we're trying to progress through some of this stuff because I think it's valuable the way you've got it laid out. So that's where I'm at. And let's get right back into it about talking about, scat and why we need to be paying attention to some of that stuff, but go for it, Cleve.
Yeah. Another point I was wanting to make is, besides scat, if you start seeing a lot of lion scratches, and Tom scratches are pretty distinct. If he's making a lot of scratches there, some of them will have scat in them, some of them won't. But if he's making a pile of them, 2 or 3 underneath this tree, and he walks up the trail or up the two-tack road or canyon another 50, 60 yards and makes another 1 or 2, start looking around, because you probably got a lion kill someplace close by. And when you do start looking around, you're going to want to look for birds. And I got it broke down into 3 different regions. There's different bird behavior, different bird species for different regions.
Well, before we get there, so a lion will make 2 or 3 scratches under a tree. It's not different lions coming in there and making scratches beside another tom or a lion's scratch.
No, you're exactly right. So it's oftentimes it's not different lions coming in there. So if you say maybe 3 or 4 scratches in a quarter-mile area, one might be under this tree right next to the road. Another one might be maybe 200 or 300 yards off the road, and there might be 2 or 3 scratches underneath another tree further up. That Tom's going to make scratches, and I think what they do, and some other really good lion hunters have kind of told me this as well, they'll make them scratches to let a female know that they got a kill there. That female, she can read those scratches, so she comes into those scratches. She knows what those scratches mean more than we would,
Mm-hmm.
Obviously they're more intuitive than we are to that, so she'll start hunting up a kill or hunting up that tom. And that's pretty good. That's pretty good indication you got a kill. That's pay dirt if you got a bunch of scratches in a small area. Now, in a small area, I mean maybe quarter mile wide by 3/4 of a mile long. If you got half a dozen scratches or 10 or 12 scratches in an area that size, there's a good chance you got a kill there. And at that point, you're going to want to start looking for birds, and then those birds can really tip you off and let you know where a mountain lion scratch or a mountain lion kill might be, or
right,
or whatever, you know.
And
those
you've got this
the
broke
first
down by
indication, though.
You've got it broke down by regions of the country.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's hear it, man.
Places we've hunted and things we've experienced. So there might be somebody on here that says, I don't agree with that, but it's not written in stone, but these are some things that we've experienced in different regions. So if you're hunting in, say, Colorado in the Rocky Mountains, the birds you're going to want to be looking for are magpies. And for some people that don't know what magpies are, they're a bird about maybe, I don't know, almost twice the size of a robin. They got a long tail. They're black and white, and they're about half human. They're intelligent.
They're an Oreo crow.
Yeah, exactly. They're black and white, and most of the time they flock in groups of anywhere from 2 to 12. Most of the time they're under a half a dozen in a group. And once they find a kill, whether it's a lion kill, coyote kill, road kill, gut pile from an elk hunter or deer hunter or something, typically those birds will take turns on watch, so that you might have 4 or 5 that are feeding on that gut pile or that lion kill or coyote kill. And there's typically be one that sits up on a branch, and he watches guard. He'll kind of hop back and forth on one branch to the next, and it's almost like he's just about half schizophrenic, kind of just looking around, making sure another predator isn't coming in from the sky or from the ground to whack his buddies while they have their dinner,
Yeah.
And pretty soon it's going to be his turn, and somebody else will take guard. They'll take the shift to watch guard. And so if you're going up a canyon or in an area where there's most likely a kill, you see a lot of magpies. Keep an eye on them. And if there's one hopping around up on a branch and you drive by and the other one's bust up, there's a good chance you got a kill there, especially if an eagle flies up. If an eagle flies up and busts out of there, that's pay dirt. That's take that to the bank. You got something dead over there, and then you go investigate it. So sometimes you'll be unsure. So say if you're driving up a canyon or riding up a canyon and you don't go check it out, on your way back, pay attention. If they're in the exact same spot, there's a good chance you got a kill there. And head on over there and check it out.
So what all regions of the West have you hunted lions in, just so we know?
Hunted Colorado in the Rocky Mountains, which would be western Colorado and eastern Utah, and the Book Cliff region. We've hunted western Utah and all of Nevada, which would be the Great Basin region. But Colorado and the Book Cliff region, that's kind of more or less part of the Rocky Mountains. And then you get out to Nevada. That's a little bit different line, a little bit different habits. And then you go down to central Arizona, down in the Sonoran Desert. That's a different line there, different habits as well. So three different regions.
Okay. Yeah, and you've seen. Go ahead, Shorty.
So where there's magpies, Cleve, do you think, in my experience, of all the birds, the magpies are probably the first ones to find a kill? Do you agree with that? It's different in this area. We don't have magpies in this area. It would be the Caracara would be the first one to find the kill, but in those regions, you find that the magpie finds it better than the crows and the ravens and those are. Yes,
sir. Yeah. They'll find it before anybody. And then the bigger birds come in and they're obviously more dominant. So they take over, and then they'll have they'll have preference over, or precedence over that kill versus the magpies because they're smaller. But yeah, exactly. The magpies, they're always the first on the scene, first on the crime scene. So that's in the Rocky Mountain region. You get out here to the Great Basin. Once you get north of, say, I-70 or Highway 50, you get into more magpie country. South of that, down in southern Nevada, they don't have hardly any magpies at all. So it's rare to have them down there. So you got to go a little bit more by crows and ravens there. But if you're hunting northern Nevada, southern Idaho, northern Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, yeah, it's good to check on them magpies. Those are surefire sign you got to kill if they're all congregated right there.
You said, Cleve, you said there were 3 different regions and you saw bird activity that was different. So tell us the difference between the eastern slope of Colorado, maybe the western slope of Colorado, Great Basin, and then Sedona or Sonora.
Okay. Yeah, you want me to just go back over all that?
Well, did I miss it while I was getting a buckskin? Is that what I did?
I don't know. Ask Shorty. I don't know. Maybe. Well, I guess Shorty's not there next to you, so never mind.
I'm sorry.
You may have. But there's 3 regions. So the birds to keep an eye on in the Rocky Mountains would be magpies, and then crows. There's a decent indication, but crows and eagles are second, but magpies are first.
Okay.
But and then you go to the Great Basin. We got quite a few magpies in northern part of the Great Basin, not southern part of the Great Basin. This would be eastern Nevada, western Utah, pretty much all of Nevada, southern Idaho. That's all part of the Great Basin. But when you get down in the southern part of the Great Basin, you'll have magpies. So you got to go more by crows. So if you're hunting southern Nevada, all that stuff, maybe into Arizona, if you see a bunch of crows fly up, that's not always the best indication. But if you see crows fly up and then just immediately afterwards you see an eagle fly up, you better go check it out, because that eagle, he's the top of the food chain. He's a wolf in the sky. He's the boss. So them crows will be sitting around waiting for him to finish eating. Then they'll go eat. When he's done, he flies off. But if you just see a bunch of crows or ravens fly up, that's not the best indication that there's a kill there, because in the wintertime, crows and ravens will feed a lot on pinyon pine nuts. And they'll congregate just like they're on a kill, but I don't know, it's a little bit different. Once you start paying attention to it, you'll notice it's different, but they're not sticky to it like they would be on a kill. They're not committed to coming back to that same spot. If you drive through and them crows and ravens fly up, they can find another place that pine nuts just as good as the place they're eating on, but if you come back through there and them crows and ravens are on it, then there's decent chance there's a kill there. But most of the time, if I've been driving by and I see crows and ravens fly up and I don't see an eagle fly up, maybe honk my horn. If I'm on a pickup truck, honk my horn or something. And if an eagle don't fly up, I keep driving, because most time that eagle, he watches them birds just the same as we do, and he'll watch them crows and stuff. And so, yeah, they got something to eat over there. Then he goes over there, he bullies them out of there. They ain't gonna fight him,
Right.
He'll whoop on them.
Yeah.
So that's a good indication. And I have a lot of clients that come out hunting from back east, and they say, "Oh, I just seen a bunch of birds fly up. Think that'd be maybe mountain lion killed a deer or something." I said, "No, I don't think so." "Why not?" I said, "There's no eagle flew up, and there's a pile of eagles out here." And when I say eagles, not bald eagles so much, mostly gold eagles.
Golden. Yeah.
Yeah. Every now and then we'll get a bald eagle here, but not much. So we just sit there, and sometimes it takes maybe 20 seconds for him to fly up, because sometimes them eagles, if they're eating on a deer or horse or something, a lot of flesh there, he can belly up a lot of meat, and he's like a B-52 bomber loaded down with a bunch of tanks or something, he has trouble getting off the ground, so it takes a little bit for him to get off the ground, getting in the air. So just wait there maybe 20 seconds and honk your horn a time or two. And if he don't fly up, and you probably don't have a lion kill or don't have a dead deer there anyhow.
Right.
Yep. So
good information, man. And those are the kind of pearls of wisdom that I think are valuable for a person that says, hey, I want to be a lion hunter. And even if you just want to come out and be a client for your outfit or go lion hunting, maybe a DIY hunt, some things that guys can start looking at.
Well, and too, if those crows and ravens are coming off of those pinyons and you're running low on sunflower seeds, go over there, because those pinyons they're ripe. And if you've never ate them, I prefer the sunflower seeds. So I will go over there and scavenge off of them after they leave. Gather them. So.
Yeah. Well, what else you got for us, Cleve?
Let's see. I was looking at my notes here a little bit ago.
So you've talked about what to look for birds flying up and things like that. Last podcast we talked about where to look. Now we're in the right area. Now we're looking for the nuances of birds flying up and things like that. So we go over, we see birds fly up, an eagle came off of it. We go over there, we look, hey man, this looks like this could be an eagle kill. So what are we looking for to determine, to make sure that this was an eagle kill versus a mountain lion, or I'm sorry, a coyote? Let me back up. How do we determine that this was a lion kill versus a coyote kill or a wolf kill even?
Exactly. So when a mountain lion makes a kill, he's pretty neat about it, but he's real clean about it compared to most predators. He's going to bite through the rib cage, eat the heart and liver and lungs, and then he's not really going to tear it up bad. And then maybe that'll be the first feeding. The second time he comes in, maybe 12 hours later, 24 hours later, he's going to come in and he's going to feed off the hind quarter or the front quarter. If it's in the Great Basin area, or say Colorado, Rocky Mountains, Colorado, most of the time they feed off the front quarter. So off one of the shoulders, that'll be their second feeding. And then sometimes the neck meat. But if it's in like the deserts of Sonora down in central Arizona, those lions will typically start feeding off the hind quarter. That'll be their second feeding. So that's something to think about.
What do you think that is? Region. Why the difference? I mean, you got the same.
I don't know. I think they're just different lions, and they have a little bit different habits. I don't know why, but I don't know. It's hard telling, but they definitely have a little bit different habits.
Do you think there's a possibility that it could be a geographical? We kind of get into this with the last podcast we did, or a couple weeks ago, about nature versus nurture. If a female has been raised eating off the front shoulder after she goes into the rib cage for a second feeding, now she's training those kittens and they do it different. I don't know. I mean, it's a mystery to me why that would happen.
Yeah. It's hard to tell why there's such a difference between regions. And that's not saying the lions up north don't eat off the hind quarter on the second feeding, but on average, what we've noticed over the years, their second feeding will be.
Okay.
And then down in the Sonora Desert, that's opposite. They'll feed off that hind quarter first, or they'll off their not hind quarter for their second feeding. But oftentimes those lions they'll keep that kill nice and clean, and then if there's cover available, they'll drag it up underneath the cedar tree or pinyon tree or pine tree, someplace where they feel like it's secure. And a big tom will drag it further than, say, a little 70-pound female. Because he's stronger, of course, he can drag it where he wants. But if they have the choice, they'll drag it to where it's secluded and it's not really visible from the sky, so birds can't see it as well. And they'll cover it up. Versus coyotes, if it's a coyote kill, they'll get in there and they just scatter it. They tear the guts out and everything. And it looks like a deer hair bomb went off when coyotes get in there. But there's a difference in how coyotes kill versus lions kill as well. So mountain lion, he's going to bite on the throat or on the back of the neck. That's going to be the killing bite, that kills that animal. If it's a big buck, most of the time they go for the throat because they don't want to have to contend with those horns and antlers. But if it's a doe or a small buck, we've seen where they'll bite them right on the back of the neck, right at the base of the skull where the spinal cord is, and drop them. Sometimes it's a quick death, and sometimes it's a war. You can see where they've thrashed around and fought, and deer gets back up, and you see the lion pounces on him again and drags him down, and it's like, man, that lion was having hell killing that deer or that elk. And sometimes it's quick death, so it can vary. And sometimes it can vary between the size of the lion and the size of the game. You got an 80-pound female, she's going to have a harder time killing a 600-pound bull elk than 140 or 160-pound tom. But coyotes, when coyotes kill, say, a deer or domestic sheep or a calf or something, if there's 2 coyotes or more, one coyote's going to bite on the throat. He's going to latch onto that throat. The other coyote or 2 is going to flank him, and most of the time they flank him and drag him down, and they start ripping the guts out first. So oftentimes they'll tear them guts out of that animal before the animal's dead, and then they string them intestines all over, and it's kind of a mess. They don't do a real good job of butchering, I will say that. So, but yeah, that's the differences.
As you describe this, it's brutal, and that's okay. We need to talk about the brutal part, because I think the non-hunting public and the anti-hunting public especially wants to paint this picture of this utopian environment out there where all these animals live in harmony, and it's brutal. And we're going to talk about the brutal parts. I'm not ashamed that you described it just like you did, because hopefully some person that doesn't know anything about wildlife or hunting listens to this podcast and is like, holy cow, I never thought about it being a violent, brutal death like that.
Yeah, and I can tell you, if I was going to be killed by animals, I would much rather be killed by a lion than coyotes. It's like he described it. It's messy, and so you're like your lions. If you're confused and you're not sure what killed something, get your knife out, go up through the head. I like to go up through the back of the head, back of the neck with the knife, and skin down around the head and the neck, but skin real close to the skin, and almost like it as if you're going to put up a pelt, and look at those marks, and you'll see, like a lion, when they get a hold of you with their claws. That's another thing, and this is going to be further back, but people will send me pictures of stuff with scratch marks going down them or whatever, and those, if you look at the shape of the lion's claw, it's like a thing anchor. When they go in and they grab, they hold. Very seldom do they pull out, so they get a good hold. But then when they bite, they're going to bite, and it might take them a bite or two to get where they want to be. But then when they do, they put the pressure on, and oftentimes they'll put a hole in the skin. Not always. When they do, though, it's going to be like a 30 caliber hole. So if you're confused, skin it out. Like skin that neck and head out, and see what it is, or see if you find holes. If you find just a couple 30 caliber holes, like he's saying in the back of the neck or in the throat region, probably a lion. If you're seeing a bunch of bruising, and this is a coyote deal, the coyotes will grab like in that jowl area, and if you've ever seen a dog like bite something and then they're hanging on, and then all of a sudden, boom, they take another bite, and they it's like a reset, and they keep doing that. That's what you'll see. You'll see bruising in that jowl area, the throat area, or you'll see a little bit of chewing on the ears. That's probably a coyote. But I will say, if I had to be killed by one, it's a hell of a lot cleaner deal and quicker deal to be killed by a lion. But the word that you use, Cleve, messy versus neat, that's exactly how I've always described it. And I've never heard anybody else describe it that way. But a lion kill is real neat compared to a coyote kill. When I see a coyote kill or a canine kill, and somebody shows me and they like, is this a lion? I know that's too messy, you know. So very good description.
Yeah,
gotcha. Yeah, that's a good idea to put that in there, to skin that out, because that's a really good point. You know, if it's a lion kill, you're going to see those large canine punctures, and it's going to be precise instead of a whole pile of them. You know.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's a good point. I never thought about mentioning that. That's good thinking. Heck yeah.
So we've discovered we've made all the discoveries here. We've looked at the kill. We've seen the birds. Decided it's a mountain lion track. Now we got this. I mean, even if it's a mountain lion track, you don't just have mountain lion tracks around it. You know, you could have eagle tracks. You could have magpie tracks. You could have coyote tracks.
So if you got tracks going all directions and you're having a hard time deciphering which one is the freshest track to go on, assess them, say, okay, this one, the tracks keep going back towards, say, the south. There's a decent chance that's where that lion's laying up. You know, if he keeps going back there, there's more tracks going back to the south, but not as many coming from the south. He could be coming into that kill from a different direction. Just whatever the way the wind's blowing, he might be wanting to go downwind of it, just to see if he's got a coyote or something else on that kill. So oftentimes when they come back to that kill, they'll come from east, the west, the north, the south. But he might be going back to his bed, and there's a good chance he's probably going to be bedding pretty close to the same spot.
Do coyotes really pose that much of a threat to them to be worried about them?
No, I think them lions come to that kill because they catch that coyote on there, and that coyote is eating on that kill. That lion's going to kill that coyote. We found 4 or 5 coyotes over the years that have been killed by lions that were caught eating on a lion kill. So
interesting, yeah.
There we go. And we'll touch on that later, but right now I guess we'll stay to the hound dog stuff. So look at those tracks, and if there's most of those tracks are leaving that kill and going in one direction, put your dogs on that part of that track. Say if you got 8 dogs, there's no sense putting 8 dogs on that part of the track. Put 4 of those dogs on that part of the track. Let them lock in on it. That's what I like to do. Lock in on it, and then take the other 4 or 5 and make a big circle out around that kill, maybe a quarter mile, half mile away from that kill. And there's a good chance you might find the other fresh part of that track. But when you drop 2 sets of dogs on there, if you have the luxury of doing that, especially with GPSs these days, you can track all your dogs and you see what everybody's doing. Get those other set of dogs maybe on another track. Somebody's going to sort something out. Sometimes what happens is those 4 dogs you put on that track will split. So now you got that track is split into 2 tracks. That's fine. And let them trail. Take them other dogs, your other pack, and go out and try to find a track coming out of there from the other end. If you find what you think is a good track coming out of that other end, put them dogs on it. Sometimes they'll be going to water. Sometimes they'll be bedding in one spot, and then there's no crusted snow or even good snow on the ground. They don't like crusted snow as they do like fresh snow, but if there's patches of snow, sometimes they won't go to water. But if there's no snow at all, they'll go maybe a mile or 2 to water to get a drink, and that might be the track that you want to trail because he might be going to water at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have the luxury of it, I'll drop 2 packs. So even a broken clock is right twice a day. So it works.
That's
sometimes
right.
you get scattered dogs, but it works. If you got the luxury of having enough dogs there, do that, and that's really good. Sorry about that. What's that, Shorty? Go ahead.
No, I was loving what you're saying. And if you're worried about having dogs scattered, the thing about a kill is they're going to base off of that kill. So even if they go on an old track, they're going to go out so far to where that lion laid up, they're going to trail. It might be the same track or a different track right back into there. And it just goes like a star. So your dogs are never really going to get too far away from you. So don't be too worried about it. Just turn them loose and let them work.
Yeah, exactly. And totally. Because it, like Shorty said, it's going to be a maze. And most time it's going to be like a big star, look like big old starfish right there. Let them dogs trail. And before you know it, somebody's going to find him. And most of the time, it seems like the one that does line it out isn't going to be one of your real cold-nosed dogs. It's going to be your free-up dog, the one that ranges out a little bit further, and he's probably a little smarter than other dogs, might not be as intense of a trailer. That's the dog you want to be watching on your GPS. That's the one that's going to bite the lion on the ass and put him in a tree. And on that same point, kills are a perfect opportunity to let young dogs get a lot of trailing experience. I mean, there's so much lion scent to trail. It doesn't matter if they're trailing the wrong part of the lion track. They're getting trailing. That's what it counts. That's what counts. That's what it's all about, So just let them dogs trail. And sometimes you have a pup that's going the wrong direction or something. Sometimes he's the one that runs into the lion, and you're like, how the hell did that happen? But you get a big old Tom in a tree, and you're like, I'm glad it did, So it's just such a great opportunity to let young dogs trail lions, and they're right there, and you get to listen to them. And sometimes you just sit there on the hillside and listen to dogs trail until they tree, and sometimes they don't tree at all. Sometimes they trail all day and you don't catch them, but it's good training. So
Cleve, and I totally understand exactly what you're doing, why you're doing it, whatever. But if you've got, for the listeners, okay, you got dogs working a track, and say you got four dogs working a track, or however many dogs you got working a track. How do you go about getting these other dogs to go work a track in another direction? Are you trying to get out of those dogs' voice range? How do you get those dogs to go? How do you go about doing that for somebody that's never done it before?
Yep, good point. So if you're on mules, say if you got 8 dogs, you want to hold 4 dogs back, that can be tough. But because you're always going to have a bunch that want to fall in. But if you can maybe tone a couple of them back, same as maybe some of the easier handling dogs, ones that honor you a little bit more, they're not as hard-headed, tone them back and keep them with you. And when they go to those other dogs, tone them just a little bit, keep them right there until the other dogs get out of earshot. Sometimes if I'm in a canyon, say if I don't have a mule or something, say if you're hunting out of a pickup truck or side by side, dump 4 dogs on there, let them first 4 lock in on that track, the ones that are trailing the track right off the kill. Drive up to the canyon, maybe go to the spring, because that fresh track might be right off that spring, and just go right there to where that second string of dogs can't hear the first ones. And that could be tough, but if you have the luxury of doing that works pretty good, because that way you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. But it can be difficult at times, but if you can do it, that works good.
And even then, don't be surprised if all your dogs end up in the same wad, because those tracks are they're going and coming. It's hard to get out of a kill.
Exactly. Yep, that's a good point. Yeah, had that happen too. You think, okay, I think I got them separated, and they all fall back to the same way. And most of the time, when they do go back to the same way, that's when you get the line caught. And I don't know if the dogs are. If they can hear that, great. Sometimes you think, man, that dog can't hear where the crap, but I don't know if they're clairvoyant or what they are, but they can sense where they need to go. So,
hey everybody, this is a great place to break this 2-part podcast up, and Cleave is going to be back with us, and we're going to go into more about evaluating tracks, kills, and how we can up our skills as houndsmen and lion hunters. So until next time, folks, you follow your hounds, I'll follow mine.